Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a deeply moving, ancient text that really perfectly captures the devastating and honestly almost uncontrollable consequences of human sorrow. It's one of those stories that just speaks directly to the core of our psychology and the destructive cycles we can fall into when we experience unimaginable loss. Okay, look at this line, "Blessed are those to whom children have never been born." I mean, it's a completely haunting realization, right? It totally upends how we normally think about family and legacy. But it really sets the stage for a tragic truth we're going to explore today. Grief can completely blind even the wisest, most disciplined individuals, twisting their minds until they do the unthinkable.
So let's start with Section 1, the ominous return, a sage's routine disrupted.
Picture this. We begin with the great sage Bharadwaja, and he's just returning to his hermitage after faithfully performing his daily rituals. Usually, he walks into this very specific, comforting atmosphere. But today? Today is different. The Agnihotra, those sacred sacrificial fires that welcome him every single day, they are completely silent. Just imagine the eerie stillness that has suddenly fallen over this holy place. It's a massive red flag, our first big clue that something is terribly wrong. And this brings us to Bharadwaja's immediate reaction. He turns to the blind Sudra warder who sits by the hermitage and directly asks him, "Why is it, O Sudra, that the fires rejoice not at sight of me?" You see, Bharadwaja notices that it's not just the fires that are silent. The warder himself isn't rejoicing like he normally would. You can practically feel the tension building here.
Now watch how quickly this mystery shifts into outright panic. First, the silent fires. Second, the somber warder. And immediately his mind just races to his kid. He expresses this deep, awful fear for his son, Yavakri, who he actually calls his son of little sense. He is absolutely terrified that his foolish son has wandered somewhere forbidden, specifically the hermitage of another sage named Raivya. His absolute worst nightmare is starting to take shape. Which brings us to Section 2, the warder's tragic tale and unfolding horror. The warder finally speaks up, and yeah, he confirms Bharadwaja's absolute worst fears. It plays out like a thriller. Yavakri did exactly what his father was afraid of. He visited the prohibited hermitage of the sage Raivya. While there, he gets attacked by a vehement Rakshasa, basically a demon, wielding a spear. In total terror, Yavakri tries to force his way into a room for safety, but the blind warder actually bars the door with his own arms. So, standing there totally hopeless, barred from safety, and seeking water in an unclean state, Yavakri is mercilessly slain. It is a violently terrifying sequence of events. The immediate aftermath of this is just devastating. The text simply states that the lifeless body of Yavakri lies prostrate on the ground. Imagine that agonizing moment when Bharadwaja finally hears this news, finds his son, and just deeply embraces his dead body. The awful tension of the unknown is gone, and it's replaced entirely by this heavy, suffocating mourning. Let's move to Section 3, a father's bitter lament, the blinding nature of grief. Now, this is where the text gets incredibly psychological, because it shows us how Bharadwaja's overwhelming sorrow actually starts to fracture his rationality. He cries out about his son's dual nature. On one hand, he remembers a pious son who practiced penances and was innocent toward all creatures. But on the other hand, there's his fatal flaw. He lapsed into rudeness and visited that prohibited residence. That single, foolish act of hubris led him straight to Yama, the god of death. It's like a lifetime of good, completely undone by one fatal misstep. But, as we know, grief desperately needs a target. Bharadwaja's sorrow very quickly transforms into this intense, irrational anger, and he shifts the blame entirely onto the sage Raivya. He literally calls Raivya an evil-minded man, focusing heavily on the fact that Raivya gave way to wrath even though he knew Bharadwaja was old and that Yavakri was his only child. So Bharadwaja's rationalizing that Raivya is the real reason he lost his son. His wisdom is now totally overshadowed by a need for vengeance.
And that leads us to Section 4, the fatal curse and end, the irreversible consequence. Because you see, Bharadwaja doesn't just stop at being angry. After announcing that he's going to give up his own life because he can't go on without his son, he crosses an unthinkable line. He lays down this devastating curse. Raivya's eldest son shall in a short time kill him, although he be innocent. It is an incredibly dark, somber moment. He is condemning an entirely innocent son to murder his own father. It's an act of pure vengeance, basically mirroring his own pain by destroying another family. But then, almost the second the curse leaves his lips,
the immediate, crushing weight of regret sets in. Clarity returns, but it's too late. Bharadwaja cries out, "Who in this world can be more wicked than those who, from affliction and deprived of their sense by sorrow, curse even their dearest friend?" He suddenly realizes his sorrow completely deprived him of his senses. It's this profound moment of self-awareness, but it comes just 1 second too late. To conclude this tragic arc, we really have to look at the absolute finality of his grief. Burdened by the loss of his son, and now utterly crushed by the guilt of his own terrible curse, there is literally no going back. Bharadwaja laments long and bitterly. He dutifully cremates the body of his only son, and then, unable to bear the weight of his new reality, he walks right into a full blazing fire to end his own life. The cycle of destruction is complete. So, I want to leave you with this final thought today, drawn straight from the heart of this text. If a wise, disciplined sage like Bharadwaja can be so entirely deprived of his senses by sorrow, how can any of us escape the destructive cycle of grief and vengeance? It's a really powerful reminder of the turbulent, dangerous power of human emotion. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it gave you something profound to think about today.